Hey team, welcome to the Nearpod section of our PD today. So I've got an agenda for you starting right here. So go ahead and feel free to jump in and out of the different sections. If you are familiar with the section and you feel comfortable, go ahead and skip it or stay and see if there's some new information that you may glean from the presentation. Now, I'm really excited to introduce Nearpod because it's been a really great tool that's evolved over time. They've really absorbed a lot of different tools from other different companies, and you'll see that here today. In essence, though, Nearpod is the ability to take a presentation that you've created or will create through Nearpod and then facilitate that and control what the students see and pace them. So as a teacher, you get the ability to exactly show what you want them to see. Or if you want to use the self-paced version, you can actually assign it as an asynchronous piece where students get to work on their own at their own pace. Also, Nearpod is available for everyone in K-12, so you'll have an access to district libraries and a ton of good resources. I'm going to try not to overwhelm. I know that there's a lot of things on your mind going into the new school year, and I hope that this helps quell a lot of your questions and gives you a little bit more solace in knowing that there's a tool that can be used and works well with our current students and their situation as well. All right, so the first thing we're going to do here is get to nearpod.com. This is where the website lives. Now, we are going to most likely add an icon in Clever if you use Clever, and the kiddos will eventually see that in their dashboard as well. That's something we're currently working on and hope to be available when the school year begins. Now, for you to log in here through our tutorial, you can just go ahead and click the login button here in the middle or the top right, and then this should be very familiar. We're going to sign in with Google. Your account is already linked, and so you should have that available. And your lessons, if you've created them, will live here. If you don't have any lessons, then you may not see anything. Now, some of these are old lessons that I've created. I'd like you to, if you're following along, just start with a blank slate, and I'll show you how to do that now. You're going to want to go over here to the top right by clicking New. It's the same if you also said Lesson in Nearpod. Just be clear that those are kind of the same thing. When you do that, you're going to access the interface for starting with Nearpod. So this gives you the ability to create a lesson within Nearpod by Nearpod. And so you'll see that there's so many different tools in here that you can embed. Now, for those of you that kind of saw that, there's also a way to do it through Google Slides. I will also go through that, so don't worry about that. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Add Slides, and you'll see that there's content here. Now, think of content as ways to engage your students through some sort of consumption of information. So for example, if I wanted to add a video, I click on video here. I can then put in any kind of information, and this searches YouTube directly. I found a video that I like, and then I'm going to go ahead and add that there, and it shows up as a tile now within my presentation. So you're going to do that with all of these. So I'm going to quickly kind of break these down as an example of what kind of content you have available at your fingertips now. One that will make a lot of my science teachers happy is the PhET simulations. Now, if you've never used this, it's a wonderful tool that it essentially embeds some interactivity, especially when we can't do labs and do all these other things that we would be able to do on a normal basis. So let's take this Equality Explorer here. So it's a lab that you can now manipulate. So if you wanted to test this out, you can double click it here, and then it gives you a little window and it loads so you can see what this does. So you can have 3 little icons here. You can manipulate these. You can then add them as shapes to this side. We can talk about balance. And again, this is right within Nearpod. Your students aren't going to have to go to an extra icon or an extra link and then do anything from there. This is built into the presentation. That'll make more sense as we go through this presentation, and you'll see I'll actually give you a lesson that students can go through, and you can see what the student view version looks like. We love that about Nearpod too. Now, slideshow and slides are pretty similar, so I'm just going to touch on slide here. So this is kind of like a blank slate. If you've ever used Adobe Spark, again, Nearpod has absorbed a lot of different people's ideas. So you'll notice here this looks very familiar if you've ever used Adobe Spark. But essentially, you can add a title here, and it gives you a sense of being able to add different content. So you can even do themes, but then upload different files. So you'll notice that there's also some icons down here. I'm going to go ahead and change the layout. Right, so now I have a ton of different ways to add content. I can go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and search for animals again, dogs here. Super cute. I'm going to add that. There's my image. I can size this a little bit if I wanted to zoom in, kind of manipulate that. I can then go to the next one here. I could add a video if I wanted. I'm going to just keep with the theme here with animals and add something there. That's a high quality image there. I'm going to go ahead and add a GIF. Now let's see if I can find something with, this is maybe a little too deep here, but let's see if we find something. Okay, we add that. Okay, now we've got an image, and that's a GIF file, a GIF file if you will, and you can size it again. And then finally, let's go ahead and do one last image. Well, let's do a video just so we can see how that works on the same kind of thing here. So that same video from before, I can add that now. So essentially I've built some content for my students to be able to consume in one panel. I'm gonna go ahead and save and exit. And again, I'll show you what this looks like from the student perspective in a moment. Now let's talk a little bit about field trips. These two here are similar, so I'll talk about them together. It's Nearpod Field Trip in virtual reality and then Nearpod 3D. So the field trip is such a fascinating tool. It works with Chromebooks. You can essentially go on a field trip without leaving your classroom. So I'm going to do the Taj Mahal here. I insert it, and when your students access this, here's what they're going to look at. So again, they're consuming content, right? They're visiting some other location here. They can kind of zoom in and zoom out a little bit and look around. If you did have a VR headset, if the kids did, then they could actually look at it. This is a little bit dizzy. I don't want to go ahead and do that for too long, but you have that ability to embed that. So in that same vein, you're using augmented reality and virtual reality. In this particular case, that's kind of a virtual piece, but you can also add 3D, say this auditory system in animal cell. I can add that as a simulation pretty much inside. Now when the students access this, again, now they can kind of manipulate this and move this around. So you're letting them explore different facets of the content that Nearpod has to offer. Again, right from the Chromebook, they open this, you'll see what the self-direction looks like, and also how you use this as a direct instruction component. All right, so we're kind of flowing through these pretty fast. Again, luckily this is a video. You can pause and change it as you need. Audio is pretty straightforward. You can go ahead and add different audio files that the students can listen to. I won't go into that too deep because it's not really going to change a whole lot from what you'll see from my other examples. Web content. If you want students to go to a website, you type in the website and this will essentially populate into the slide presentation that then it'll redirect them to wherever they want to go. That just sits in the window and then they can click on it and interact with it. Again, you can edit it and change it and do all that stuff whenever you need to, but don't need to go too deep into that. Again, I'll show all of this in a bit. Desmos I'm going to save for later because I have an example of a way to integrate this with a previous slide content, so I'm not going to add that just yet. PDF viewer, pretty straightforward. You can add PDF files so the students can read them here. Now, vocabulary. This is probably its own video, but I'm going to go ahead and touch on it a little bit because this is fascinating. This is available with our subscription, and I'm going to give you an example of what that looks like. So this is a vocabulary video. They have reading and writing. You can go math, science, all kinds of really cool content here. I'm going to go ahead and pick with rhyming here, and I'll give you a sense of what they have to offer. So there's my vocabulary video. I'm going to go ahead and click through so I can see what it sounds like.
Rhymes are words that sound the same. When the end of two words sound alike, those words rhyme. Like cat and hat. Let's rhyme. Bat, rat, dog.
All right, so you've got a sense of what that vocabulary will be like. There's a lot of lessons and they have that content. Now this is, again, consumable information that the students would take a look at on their own or with your direction, and then you're building it into the Nearpod slide presentation. All right, BBC Worldwide, those are videos that you can pull from their library, and I'm going to go ahead and skip these other two here, not necessarily as applicable to us right away. All right, so far we've just talked about adding content, but a lot of what we're going to want to do with this content is actually see if there is a sense of understanding. A check for understanding embedded throughout a presentation is key. So we're going to begin with some of the ways to do that through the activities inside Nearpod. Time to Climb is actually very familiar to you if you've ever used Kahoot. They essentially took their idea and it allows you to add questions and then put in the answers, and it looks almost exactly like Kahoot. And again, I will give you that reference. You will see that in a moment of how that'll look like in the end. With questions and open-ended questions, this is very similar to what you would expect it to be. I'll add a little piece here, that little nugget that I think is worth mentioning. Your question would go here, and then you can add a piece of instruction material. So if you want them to watch a video or read an article and then have them respond in short paragraph form, they have that ability. But then the powerful piece is you can actually enable audio recordings. So that means students can respond directly back to this presentation just with their microphone. I know that may seem a little abstract now, but imagine if a younger student doesn't know how to write per se, but they can speak at this particular point. Or if you have an ELL student that you want to practice speaking, then you build them a script, you can have them write a script ahead of time and then record directly into here. So I love that feature. I love that you can embed that into a question and it'll show up throughout other spots too. Another piece, you can add a timer. You can always add this to these activities. You'll see it. If you see the add timer piece, you can add it there. So you can go up to whatever amount of time you want. It goes up to 99 minutes and so on and so forth. So if I added a 45-second timer, you add that there, and then I can add my questions here, and then I'm good to go. So I just added a way for them to respond to me, for students to be able to give me some feedback if they're listening to the content that I'm adding, or if there's a way for them to see that they understand the material. Now let's talk about Draw It. Draw It allows us to take similar fashion of what we did with the open-ended response, right? I can still add my image, video, PDF. This is all good stuff that they can read, and then you give them some instructions. But the magic happens here. You can actually add an image in the background, and then students can annotate on top of it. One of the most requested features after the KidGrit section or sessions of PD were, how do I get a whiteboard? How do I get my students to write on the whiteboard in a way that I can see it? So the whiteboard feature unfortunately does not work properly on the Zoom piece, but here on Nearpod, your students will be able to actually access this with their Chromebooks. So I took a PDF file here. It's a math example. I go ahead and zoom in because I want them to see a couple pieces here. I add it. Now it's good to go. I hit save, and now they'll be able to annotate. So I'm going to take you into this real quick just because I think it's worth kind of showing what this will look like for the students. When you have it set, you can still add the timer and all that good stuff. I'm going to go ahead and get you into preview mode here. And this is the neat part. When you're in preview mode, you see what the students see. So you can test it right away. If you wanted to test it on a Chromebook, you could just jump in in your account, and then you can test it as that as well. So here's some of the options. So I can change colors and do all that good stuff, and then highlight the PDF file that I added there. I can actually highlight for reals. I can mark up, but I can also highlight. I can add text boxes. I can go ahead and move this wherever I'd like, and it allows me to then resize whatever I need there. And then add images. It doesn't have to be just the text. They can actually go find images and add them directly there. And it builds right from Google Search, Safe Search, and you have that ability to write right on top of there and then superimpose it onto the PDF file. Obviously, you have an erase function. You can erase everything and it just closes the drawing. You do get to see these responses in real time with students. I love that about Nearpod. I'll go deeper into that when I show you more specifically what the student previews look like. So let's continue on this conversation. So we've gone through most of the activities here. The other request that we got after the PD with KidGrit was, how do I get a brainstorming tool? So in that PD, if you attended, they showed you Padlet and people really liked it. Jamboard, people like that too. This feature is very, very similar to that. And so it essentially allows you to brainstorm ideas. Again, you can add an image. So if you wanted a prompt, you can drag your own image if you'd like, or again, you can find an image that makes sense for your prompt. So I grab a picture here. You'll see that you'll see why that matters here in a second. If you want corkboard, you can kind of change the different formats here, sticky note style, all that good stuff. So I'm going to pick one, I hit save. Now I have a spot for my students to collaborate and brainstorm. Here's what this looks like. Okay, the kiddos. Actually, I'm gonna save that for a moment here. I'll show you again what the student section looks like when we jump into that example. Another important feature that was omitted in Zoom was polling. I know that a lot of teachers were asking about it, and unfortunately, it's not available for us because it's an extra paid feature that we don't have at this time, but you can access this through Nearpod. So to create a poll, it's very straightforward. This one is an open-ended question here. You put your response there, or your responses down here, question up there. You can add as many as you need. And you can also add images, videos. So this is a consistent piece. You can always add an image, a video, a PDF, access to your drive, web content. You can record pieces, and then you can add that timer piece to create that sense of urgency, right? Because that's going to be important too. Are your students engaged in what you're doing, and how do you know? Well, Nearpod will allow you to see that information on the fly with them there with you, and then you can kind of make adjustments based off of that. Quizzes is exactly what it sounds like. You make all those questions that you just saw, you can add them in a quiz format, so they do multiple questions. Matching pairs also sounds very similar to what you would expect it to be. You have a word and an image, and you try to pair them together. All right, so now let's touch a little bit on fill in the blank here. So for fill in the blank, you can kind of change the style here, but essentially what's nice is you can take text that you have from anywhere, copy and paste it in here, and then remove some of the words. So I'll show you that now. All right, so I found a piece of text here that I want to go ahead and paste. I paste that right there, and then now I can move to the next step and decide what words I want to put in the bank here. So I could take slope intercept there, that, okay, and there. Right, so now when I go through and create this, my students essentially get to see this particular sentence with the words missing, and then they can choose them in the correct order, hopefully in the correct order. And you can do multiple sentences. It doesn't just have to be one. You can add different pieces of information there. So all the words kind of show up here, and so then you decide where they should go. And once they place them correctly, then they can go ahead and hit done. So it's, again, a great piece to be able to add right within Nearpod. You're adding so many different activities that engagement should be super high, hopefully. And I would recommend, picking some that you start getting really good at and focusing on them. And then as you feel more comfortable, add as many of these as you like. The last one here that I'll talk about, because memory test is exactly what you would expect it to be. The Flipgrid piece here is kind of amazing, because Flipgrid in a standalone piece is great on its own, but to be able to bring in your particular Flipgrids into Nearpod so that they're not having to go somewhere else is such a big deal. I think it's really important to highlight this. Now, I went ahead and I grabbed my links. These are a couple admin links that I have, and I grabbed the student URL, and then I go ahead and add them now. So then when I go see this, I click on the Flipgrid and I want to preview it. I can show you what the students will see. Now, our information is usually behind a login page, so keep that in mind. They'll still be able to log in, but what's great is that they are able to log in with their Google account, and if they're on Chromebooks, they can just sign in directly. So it's a great feature. It allows us to incorporate all these different aspects that we like. And then now my Flipgrid, I have the question built in here. The kids can respond, and then it'll turn on the camera and get your responses right from there, and that'll feed back to your Flipgrid. Now, even now, I'm still inside of my Nearpod, so you'll see up here to the top right, I close this, and now I go back to my Flipgrid. So I did all of these particular questions. I will now show you what this looks like from a student-facing perspective. So those lessons that you just saw, I made from scratch. I was using the lesson in Nearpod, and I started with nothing and just built activities just to kind of play around with them. But there's also a huge advantage in using Nearpod, and that's the Nearpod Library. If you click on Nearpod Library, you can sort this by many different subject matters. You can go deep into grade levels. Say you wanted second grade there, and again, you're just filtering upon filtering upon filtering. There are a lot of lessons. These are all available to you. If you wanted a virtual reality lesson, you can see the resource type there. If you want a more professional development, again, you have a plethora of examples to pull from. I wanted to show you something specific though that we have available to us. So you can sort these by premium packages and the things created by Nearpod or different publishers. You'll notice that in the different publishers here, you'll see some familiar faces. News ELA, you have CK12 for those that know how to use that. Desmos and LearnZillion. So these here are available to you, and more specifically, you're able to access things from Common Sense Media. I think it's a great idea if you're trying to set that rapport right from the beginning, have the conversation about digital citizenship with the best in the business around digital citizenship, and that's Common Sense Media. So you have these available to use right away. Some of the premium packages that you'll have access to here also include another set of PD, social emotional learning. There's the Nearpod with Common Sense Media again, English Learner piece, and these again are available to you. Click through them and see if you find something that you enjoy. So we know how to search. We've created some lessons, and now let's talk about how do I integrate stuff that I already have, because you've made content before. You have Google Slides most likely that you want to use, and you don't want to start from scratch like I just did in that example. Obviously you could find something in the library, but maybe it doesn't fit your needs because you already have the perfect lesson that you want to utilize. So let's jump into lesson in Google Slides. So this is an amazing component of Nearpod that essentially is going to allow you to take a lesson that you currently have and then add the interactivity of Nearpod into your lesson. So once you click on Nearpod lesson there, that integration, it'll give you a sense of what you need to do to accomplish this. The first thing is you need the Nearpod add-on, and that's pretty straightforward. Over here to the top, you see the word add-on, and then you're going to click on where it says get add-ons. Now, I already have the add-on, so you'll see that it kind of gives it to me, but I'm going to show you what you would do. You click on get add-ons, and you're going to search in the top here for the word Nearpod, and it'll populate there. And obviously you see it down here in the search engine, and you can just install it. There's no password or anything you need to do that. For that, that's just, you can just download that. No technician to get involved there. You can, if you have issues, obviously let us know and we can help you out. Now that you've installed it, you go to your add-ons and you open it. What this is going to allow you to do is pull up that menu that you saw earlier when I was messing with the activities and the content, and you can bring them in here. So now I love that. I love that I have these tools available to me and I can just drop them in, but I need to go find a lesson that I want to incorporate into here. So give me a moment and back. So this is the lesson that I have. It's something I've created a long time ago, but I want to breathe some fresh air into it here. I want to give it a new little twist on it. So I have the stuff that I want my students to do already. There's a video attached. I can repurpose the whole thing, but I want to address one part here that I usually do with this lesson. Normally, I would have my students go into Desmos and create a Desmos template in Desmos and then bring it back into Google Slides so that then I can see what they did. With Nearpod, essentially what that allows me to do is build it right within here and not have to go outside to Desmos and to come back. So essentially, with this particular lesson, I have the ability to add interactivity. All those different things that I did earlier, right, they're still here, but I'm going to go ahead and pull my Desmos graphing calculator. I love this because now I have my Desmos piece. I can give it different themes here. If you've used Desmos, you know that there's a few different ways to kind of build this. I'm going to go ahead and just start with a blank graph. I want my students to build a graph with the information that I provided in the Google Slides template, and I don't necessarily want them to go through and do anything else with it. I want them to build from scratch. Okay, so you'll see here it says click edit this slide. So you're using the add-on. So now I'm going to go ahead and edit this slide. Okay, give it a second, and then it populates in here. What this now allows me to do is if I wanted to build something here, give them an equation or give them some sort of information, I can do that here, and now they have the interactivity of Desmos right within Slides. Now, you're not going to present this. I know that we haven't talked about delivery just yet, but essentially what this is going to allow us to do now, though, is to go back into Nearpod, and when it's time to send it to my kids, that lesson is going to be built in there. And you'll see here that it takes a moment because you're taking the lesson from Slides and bringing it back into Nearpod, but now you have the interactivity that you're building all in one spot. So again, everything I just showed you about how to use the activities and the content, you can add them right within there. But I'm going to go ahead and give you a preview here so you can see the lesson that I just built, and it's exactly this. It's preserved the same way that I had my content, all that good stuff. But now when I get to my Desmos piece here, that equation or that template there is right there. That blank template that I gave them, you can use right there. So I love that you're able to use Nearpod with content that you already have and just give it a little bit of life, a little bit of engagement, and you can see that. Now, let's talk now about how you get this to your students, because we've talked about making all this content, but what do you do to get it to them? So the first thing you can do, if you don't want to build a lesson, you just want something quick, you have Quick Launch. Quick Launch allows you to do open-ended questions, draw it, timers, collaborate on the fly. You click the collaborate piece, you give them the template, you build it right fast, hit Quick Launch, right, and then it builds on the fly with no pre-planning. This is exit ticket, if you will. It could be right from the beginning that you need something, and then you have that. I'm not going to talk about the Zoom meeting just yet because there's a little bit of a piece that needs to go there, but you can just grab that link. This link here can be shared with if you're already in the Zoom, you can paste it in there. You can go directly to Google Classroom, paste it in there. You could do it in both spots, and then you can just share it. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that and then share. This is what the students would see. So now we have what the kids would see. This on the left side here is the student list. This is my teacher view, and then here is my student view. Okay, so I have join session. Okay, and we're waiting, and you see here right away it says student 1 is waiting for you to start your lesson. So I'll go ahead and start my lesson, and you'll see that collaborative piece where you want the students to, I did it on the fly, just sent the link over. Would you like to approve student comments before they are posted? This is a piece where if you trust your students to do this, you can. If you don't, it's all up to you, but I would suggest when you first start off, I would approve the comments before. And then now when I type in my brainstorming ideas, brainstorm, right? I've got my first idea. I post it in here. I grab it. There it goes. Now when I add an image, and I can go ahead and go back to my image search that I was playing with earlier. Grab an image there, throw it in there, and now do that. Now you'll notice that you don't really have anything on this particular side because you are approving them. So if I want to approve it, I say yes, that's approved, and it populates for everyone. So that feature we talked about with Jamboard, where you want kids interacting and throwing, the beautiful part here is that I see who this is. I can see that it's student number 1 on all of these pieces. Now you can, if you'd like, turn that mode off so that students can't see their names, right? Because if you want it to be anonymous and you want to make sure that you're letting the students interact without necessarily feeling the pressure of being judged, you can turn that off. I love that feature. Here's the slide presentations that you would have at the bottom, and then here's the list of students. You know who the students are because you'll have their names on there because you can force them to do that. But for this, it's just fantastic to be able to see that. So we saw how to essentially start a quick launch, but I made that lesson earlier and I'd like to use it here now. So if you make something ahead of time and you want to use it instead of a quick launch, you're going to see it once it's saved. You get these options: live lesson and student pace. Now the difference between live lesson is you get to control the pace. Everyone jumps onto the same code, and then from there you get to move along the lessons and control how your students are interacting. You're speaking to them, you're interacting with the pieces, you're controlling exactly what you want them to see. With student pace, it's obviously they have the control over that. You give them a code, you ask them to do this in a certain amount of time, and then they work at their own pace. So you'll see it exactly, all of the different interactivities that I just added, and then you'll see it here. So you'd give them the code. I'll explain what that means here in a moment. But let's talk about the live lesson, because this is the one I'd like to show you. When you click on live lesson, it's going to have you generate a specific code for your students, and then that code is what they can enter. If they go to nearpod.com and just put that code in, then they're locked into your lesson. What I prefer to do is use Google Classroom. Once you click Google Classroom, it brings up all the different classrooms that you have, and then you can load them directly here and then add the Nearpod lesson right to there. That's my preferred way of doing it. Obviously, there's always more than one way to do some of these things, and sometimes it's easier to just do it the way that you're most comfortable with. This is my recommendation. So I create an assignment, I hit go. Now I add that lesson gets added directly to my classroom, and my students can access it from there. Or you can also grab the link here. This link, and if you're already in the Zoom call, you can then share it directly to the chat. Everyone that's in the chat can click on the link and it takes them directly. I'll show you what that looks like now. So now we've got on the right side here, we have student view, and on the left, this is teacher view. I'm going to go ahead and give this student 1. This is the name of the student. This will be a little different. Again, if you have it in Nearpod, if you have it in Google Classroom, then this piece here is kind of locked in. But we're just going to go ahead and have them put their name in now. It says, welcome, please wait your teacher to start the lesson. So we're waiting for them to lock in, and oop, there it goes. The name of the student, and all the students that would populate would show up there. Now for you as a teacher, you get to have some of these extra options. You get to see all the students. If you see someone in here that you don't like, remove them. You also have the ability to see all the lessons down here, or all the different interactivity pieces, and you can jump to them if you'd like. You don't have to go in order, But if you built it most likely in an order, you're probably going to use that order anyway. And then finally, you can hide student names. So this is very important for sharing certain pieces so that students cannot see each other if you don't want them to. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start the presentation. So again, I'm controlling the pace. You notice that as soon as I click that, it shows up for my student. My student now has the collaborative board. It says collaborative board is waiting for teacher input. This allows you to moderate. If you're feeling a little uneasy about using a collaborative tool because you're not sure what they're going to put on there, you can moderate the comments. So that's the question. Would you like to approve the comments before they're posted? I'm going to go ahead and hit yes for now, and then I'll show you what that means. I added an image earlier, so they see that image there now, and then I can add some text here. So Brainstorm here, this is the equivalent again of we talked about with Jamboard. Notice as soon as that student posted, it says pending approval. I get a notification here on the left, says, hey, student 1 is trying to put the word brainstorm in. That sounds fine. I hit yes. Now it shows up for everyone. The pending is gone now, and now they can add more. You want to add more, you can go ahead and add an image here. You have the ability to search the images. I went through and then I posted, and again, pending approval, and I click that and I approve that particular post. All right, so you're able to see essentially the difference here, student versus our teacher view. One thing I want to mention too is they also have the ability to take notes over here to the side that go directly to their Google Drive. It will ask them to sign in and put their information in there. If they're signed into the Chromebook, then that's a non-issue. But they can put notes down there for the different slides that they're making. The question that was open-ended, that was the spot where what is your favorite, I'm gonna go ahead and block that there. What was your favorite thing to do this summer? Right, I put that question in there, and now they can answer here. So they can answer with text, but also if I enabled the microphone, which I'm not doing right now because I'm using a microphone, but you could turn that on and they can record their voice. That's such an important feature for so many of our students, and it's built in right into a lot of these different types of questions. I also mentioned another accessibility piece. The immersive reader is something that a lot of our students may need. If they see this icon here, the immersive reader is the ability to have the text be read to them. Okay, so my students hit submit now. They go there and then said got it, and after they submit their answer, you'll see here that student hasn't answered just yet, but there it populates. You'll notice that as these answers come in, you can share an answer. If a student has a really good response and you want to share it with the rest of the class, you hit share there, and it'll essentially push it out to every single student that answers the question there. Now, it also won't have their names on there, so you can feel rest assured that you're not really embarrassing anyone. You're just sharing a really good example. I bet that student that you just shared is going to pipe up and say that was him. Hopefully, they're proud of their work. Now we've got the background that I threw in there and the draw it ability. So this was the feature where you're able to annotate on top of and highlight text and imaging. You'll notice here that as I was making those changes in real time, you get to see what the students are doing. Are they really interacting with you, or are they just pretending to because they're on the call? This gives you a lot of insight as to what your students are doing and how they're responding. The 3D modeling that we had of the ear canal shows up here. Again, the students can explore it and they can see that. You see what they're seeing there. And then our VR for the beautiful Taj Mahal. So you have all of these tools built into the one spot with Nearpod. And then we're finally getting to the time to climb, which is, again, a very similar to Kahoot. You'll hear some music here. You can randomize the question or choose the different theme that you want to go with. You'll hear some music here in a moment. The students get to select a character. In time to climb, you'll see that it's very, very similar to Kahoot. And I'll start it. Okay, so as the students are responding, you get to see this here. So what is this? It gives them the timer, and then obviously we select dog, and it gives them a little bit of feedback there. So on the student side, as they're responding, you get to see how many points they're getting, how fast you're moving on to the next question. Chinchilla, it gave them the time, gives them a total of how many points they have overall, and you get that insight immediately as to who's responding and who's not responding, and you can see that on your side. All right, so one last note here. After you ended your session and your students gave you some information, you can always go back and view the different answers. They've done a really good job of building in the reports for each of these students. So once you're done, you end the activity, you can switch to student view, you can switch from clicking on Nearpod, you can grab the report or end the session. If you end the session, it ends it for everyone that are logged in, and now you have that report here in your information. So you go back to reports here to the left, and you can see how that lesson went, and it gives you the information. Those 19 slides, it was this was the title that I created, and you see the information from the PD here. So you have a great breakdown of every single question that you had, how each student did, the summary, and it gives you really good insight as to where the gaps might be, maybe where they dropped off, where some of the information that you would need to fill in maybe a smaller setting, a smaller group setting. But it's really good to kind of narrow down what that piece is.